should have known it was coming the moment Travis Denton started calling himself co-lead in front of the interns. He said it with such ease, like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror while fixing his Bluetooth headset. "Yeah, I'll handle that at the summit," he told the logistics team, while casually swiping one of my briefing packets like it was his idea to begin with. "Travis and I are tag-teaming this one," he added, flashing that frat boy grin. Tag-teaming, as if he were the brains behind this 18-month client retention initiative instead of the guy who popped into calls late and left early. The thing about Travis is, he's not stupid, he's something worse, competently average and painfully aware of it. That's the kind of man who's always starving for shortcuts. And cutting me out seemed to be his shortcut of the month. The upcoming Pacific Tech Global Summit in San Diego was the final phase of a multi-department rollout, the kind of engagement that kept CFOs quiet during budget season. Because of all the system integrations, international compliance threads, and overlapping vendor chains, I'd been appointed official project lead. On paper, in the contract, everywhere that mattered. I had the emails, the version logs, the approvals. None of that stopped Travis from creeping in like mold behind drywall. At the pre-flight briefing, I laid out the final itinerary, color-coded tabs, daily milestones, full print deck. I'd barely finished explaining the workflow when Travis cleared his throat and said, "We'll probably trim the client roundtable on day 2. I'll take the keynote slot." The room froze. My jaw flexed. No one made eye contact. Cheryl from HR was reading her water bottle like it contained career advice. The interns typed harder. I smiled thinly. "The keynote's already confirmed with the client," I said evenly. "They requested I walk them through the new resource pipeline." Travis didn't blink. "Right, but we don't want to overwhelm them. I'll keep it high level." Translation: he didn't understand the deck and didn't want to expose himself in front of executives. "Then," I said, "you might want to let the person who built the pipeline handle the walkthrough." Silence thickened. Someone coughed. Someone else scribbled random doodles just to look busy. That's when I knew I was in trouble, because silence in that room meant agreement by omission. Afterward, I caught Cheryl in the hallway. "Is there confusion about project leadership?" I asked. "Travis seems to be repositioning himself." She gave that corporate HR smile, the one that hides behind empty platitudes. "Leadership on offsites is fluid, Natalie. Just roll with it." Fluid. There it was, the magic word used to gaslight competent women out of authority. I walked straight back to my desk and checked the travel portal. My seat, 12C, outbound to San Diego, was gone. Blank. Like I didn't exist. I refreshed 3 times. "Same," I called the travel coordinator. "Hey, my summit reservation disappeared from the system." She hesitated. "Oh, yeah, I noticed that earlier." "Probably a glitch. The app loses data when itineraries are updated last minute." "Was there a last-minute update?" I asked flatly. Another pause. "I don't have visibility into who authorized it." "Don't worry," I said. "I'll handle it." I hung up, stared at my blinking cursor, and checked my calendar. Final client prep, 9:30 a.m. Canceled. Replaced by leadership sync. No invite for me. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. I'd seen this play before, but this time, I had leverage. Legal, written, notarized leverage. Because my name, Natalie Ford, was on the master service agreement itself, listed as key personnel. Clause 4.2. Not optional, not fluid, not replaceable. If they wanted to erase me, they were about to find out how costly that erasure could get. The breaking point came at the airport, gate 27B, boarding for flight 1630 to San Diego. A gate agent called out, "Team from Axis Dynamics, boarding group 2. One by one, my colleagues stepped forward. Greg from finance, Maya from compliance, even Kyle. the intern who once spelled logistics with a K. Everyone got their passes. Then, silence. "Anyone else?" she asked. I stepped up. "Hi, I'm Natalie Ford, seat 12C, traveling with Axis Dynamics." The agent typed, frowned. "You're not on this manifest." "That can't be right. I confirmed twice. You'll need to check with your company coordinator," she said carefully. And right then, Travis appeared behind me like he'd rehearsed his entrance. "There's been a change, Natalie," he said smoothly. "You're not needed at the summit." I stared at him. "Excuse me? Enjoy your week off," he said, already turning away. I didn't move, didn't shout, didn't break. I just pulled out my phone and opened a draft. Subject: MSA Clause 4.2. Immediate clarification required. 2. Dana Brooks, General Counsel, Pacific Tech. Body: I've been informed I'm no longer part of the summit despite being the named project lead under Section 4.2. Please confirm whether the contract timeline remains valid given this change. Send. The war had just begun. The plane took off without me, and for a few seconds, I just stood there watching it taxi away. Travis probably in business class, sipping orange juice and basking in his stolen victory. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. My hands were steady as stone, and that terrified calm was my real power. Rage, when restrained, turns surgical. I opened my inbox and refreshed. Nothing yet from legal, no panic, no forward chain from the compliance thread. But that email I'd just sent was a loaded gun. I'd CC'd both our company counsel and the client's legal representative. One of them would notice the clause breach, and when they did, Travis's little leadership shuffle would turn radioactive. I sat down in the corner of the terminal, laptop open, pulling up every document that mattered. Signed contracts, internal memos, version histories. Section 4.2 of the Master Service Agreement couldn't have been clearer. Any removal of named key personnel requires written client approval in advance. Failure to comply constitutes a material breach subject to suspension of deliverables. There was no wiggle room, no gray zone, no fluid leadership. It was ironclad, and Travis had just stepped squarely on it. 23 minutes later, my phone buzzed. From Dana Brooks, General Counsel, Pacific Tech. Subject: MSA Clause 4.2. Immediate clarification needed. Hi, Natalie. Thanks for flagging. We're reviewing the agreement with our legal team and client counsel. Please stand by. It wasn't an answer, but it was movement. And in corporate warfare, movement means someone somewhere just realized they might be holding a grenade. I exhaled, shut the laptop, and walked to the restroom. Not to cry. There was nothing left to cry about, but to pull out my emergency backup. 3 days ago, when I first noticed that phantom glitch deleting my reservation, a small, paranoid part of me had booked a backup flight. Personal card, 6:40 p.m. Departure, seat 17A. At the time, I thought I was overreacting. Now, it felt prophetic. I grabbed a burnt cup of airport coffee, sat near the window, and waited. Around me, travelers were laughing, scrolling, arguing over charging ports. But I sat silent, the kind of silence that hums with anticipation. Every minute that passed was another screw tightening around Travis's shiny, clueless ego. At 6:42 p.m., I boarded my own flight to San Diego. Middle seat, no upgrades, no expense reimbursement. I didn't care. The victory wasn't in the comfort, it was in the control. Somewhere in the sky, another jet was carrying my entire team, led by a man who didn't realize he'd already set his own stage for disaster. When I landed, San Diego smelled like salt and consequence. The others were already there, probably checked into their resort suites with ocean views and complimentary mimosas. I took a cab to a modest business hotel near the conference center. No fancy amenities, no logo-branded tote bags waiting on the bed. Just beige walls and a desk lamp that flickered like bad karma. I opened my laptop again. 9:12 p.m. My inbox pinged. From Dana Brooks. Subject: Update. Clause 4.2. Oh, Natalie. Client CEO. Mr. Kwan has been briefed on potential personnel discrepancies. He's requesting confirmation of your status on site tomorrow morning. Please forward relevant documentation. I stared at the message. My pulse slowed, not from fear, but satisfaction. That was the beginning of the reckoning. Travis hadn't just sidelined me. He'd violated a signed governance clause directly tied to deliverables worth $30 million. And now the client's CEO was asking about me by name. I replied instantly, attaching PDFs of every relevant file: the original assignment letter, the leadership matrix, the email thread where I was designated as key personnel. Then I packed my bag, slid the folder with hard copies inside, and set my alarm for 6:00 a.m. By sunrise, I was already dressed: black blazer, gray blouse, hair tied back in a low knot. Nothing flashy, just sharp. I didn't walk through the main entrance of the resort. I slipped in through the side door used by catering staff, badge clipped to my bag, eyes forward. From the hallway, I could hear Travis's voice through the ballroom speakers. He was mid-presentation, and even from outside, I could tell it was going downhill fast. His tone was too rehearsed, his pauses too long. Then I caught a line that made me almost choke on my coffee. As you'll recall from the February version of the roadmap, February, that was 3 iterations ago. The version with outdated budgets and unapproved resource pools. The final version, the one I authored, was signed in August after weeks of alignment calls. He was presenting obsolete data to the client's CEO. My God. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. From Riley Chen, client analyst. Hi, Natalie. Sorry to bother you. The deck Travis is showing doesn't match what we reviewed in August. Is this even the right version? I typed back, calm but deliberate. Hi, Riley. You're correct. The February deck is outdated. The finalized roadmap and scope memo were sent on August 14th. I can forward the accurate version immediately. His reply came within 2 minutes. Please do. I hit send, then leaned back against the wall, coffee in hand, listening to the muffled disaster unfolding in the ballroom. Travis thought he'd stolen the spotlight, but all he'd done was aim it directly at himself. The avalanche had started, and he was standing right beneath it. By mid-morning, the air around the Pacific Tech Summit was thick with espresso, recycled hotel AC, and the faint panic of men realizing their slide decks were missing half their data sources. I wasn't even in the ballroom, but I could feel the tension leaking through the walls. That's what happens when a VP builds his house of cards on someone else's architecture and then starts pulling at the wrong string. From my spot behind a decorative ficus near the west hallway, I could hear Travis fumbling his way through another segment. As outlined in our revised resource plan, he said. His voice pitched too high. We've aligned scope with Q2 projections. Then a long pause, the kind of silence that tastes like dread. He'd lost his place. Again, he didn't have the updated August data. He was trying to extrapolate from an obsolete document I'd deprecated months ago. The February plan still assumed pre-acquisition infrastructure, and the budget section referenced systems that didn't even exist anymore. It was a train wreck in slow motion. Then my phone vibrated again. Another email from Riley Chen, the client analyst with the patience of a saint. Subject: quick clarification on headcount slide. Body: hi. Natalie, just checking. Travis mentioned a staffing ramp that doesn't match the numbers we confirmed in August. Can you verify which dataset is accurate? I almost laughed out loud. The client's own team was already fact-checking him against me. Perfect. I typed back. The correct staffing ramp is on page 12 of the August roadmap deck. Everything presented before that version is outdated. Attaching for your reference. Then I sent it to Riley, CCing Dana Brooks at Pacific Tech Legal, because if you're going to detonate a clause, you don't do it quietly. I pocketed my phone, straightened my blazer, and kept listening. The murmurs inside the ballroom were getting sharper now. The polite laughter had evaporated. There was the faint scrape of chairs, a cough from someone high-ranking trying to break the tension. Then, Travis said something that made me stop breathing for half a beat. "As per the February forecast," he repeated, oblivious. "We expect a 7% improvement in client-side delivery throughput." There it was, the smoking gun. The February forecast had been thrown out for non-compliance. I had the email from the compliance officer herself confirming it. The very data he was presenting had been invalidated by the client's legal department. My phone buzzed again. New message. From Dana Brooks. Subject: urgent. Client CEO. Request: Natalie, Mr. Kwan is asking for your presence on site. Be prepared to meet with him and legal counsel by 11:30 a.m. Bring all signed versions of the roadmap, leadership matrix, and the MSA, section 4.2 highlighted. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just whispered, and the dominoes began to fall. 40 minutes. That's all I had. I ducked out of the alcove, slipped into the restroom, and opened my folder on the counter. Every page labeled, cross-referenced, and tabbed. Exhibit A, MSA Clause 4.2. Exhibit B, Internal Communications Proving Unauthorized Leadership Changes. Exhibit C, my official appointment confirmation signed by both companies. Each page was its own nail for Travis's corporate coffin. At 11:15 sharp, I walked out of that side entrance like a ghost with purpose, down the marble hallway toward the West Wing Conference Center. The sign outside read, Closed Session, Synedra Corp. And Axis Dynamics Executive Review. Exactly where I needed to be. I entered through the business center, bypassing registration entirely, just as Dana's message instructed. When I pushed open the glass door to Conference Room C, the air was cold. Not temperature cold, but tension cold. At the long table sat Marcus Kwan, CEO of Synedra Corp., Dana Brooks, General Counsel, two of their senior strategists, and at the far end, looking like a man who'd accidentally walked into his own firing, was Travis. He didn't say a word. His tie was crooked, his hair slightly wilted. One hand hovered over his tablet like it might sprout wings and fly him to safety. He looked at me, blinked once, then looked away. I walked to the client's side of the table, placed my folder in front of Dana, and opened it to the highlighted clause. She didn't even wait for my explanation. She began to read aloud. Any removal or exclusion of named project leadership must be approved in writing by the client's CEO or designated representative. Failure to obtain prior approval constitutes a material breach of contract and may result in immediate suspension of deliverables pending review. The only sound afterward was Travis swallowing hard. Mr. Kwan looked at me, calm but cutting. "Ms. Ford," he said, "is there anything else we should be aware of?" "Yes," I said. I slid forward the printout of the internal email chain, Exhibit B. The first message from Travis to HR. Repositioning Summit Leadership for Optics. Natalie doesn't need to be visible on this one. The timestamp? 5 days before the flight. The second from a junior analyst. Just confirming. Natalie's still listed as key personnel under the MSA. Should we check with legal? Travis's reply. No need. I've got it. Dana read every line slowly, the way surgeons trace where to cut. Then she handed the pages to Kwan. He skimmed, his jaw tightening, before looking at Travis. "I believe," he said quietly, "you've just made our compliance review very easy." Travis tried to speak, voice cracking. This was a misunderstanding. "We were streamlining." "No," Dana interrupted. "You were violating." And with that, the room went silent again. Cold, surgical, irreversible. For a few seconds, no one spoke. the kind of silence that buzzes against your eardrums like static before a storm. Travis sat frozen, one hand on his tablet, the other gripping the edge of the table like it was a life raft. His face was pale, shiny under the conference lights, the kind of sheen you get when your body realizes it's losing before your brain does. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. My focus was on Marcus Kwan, the client CEO, a man whose composure could cut through glass. He adjusted his cufflinks, glanced once at the clause copy in front of him, and said in a voice that was quiet but final, "Ms. Ford, if we were to resume the summit, are you prepared to lead it as originally contracted?" I met his gaze. "Yes, sir. I have the final roadmap deck, the approved scope alignment, and the August revisions, all verified and ready." He nodded once. No emotion, just acknowledgement. Then he turned to my own company's CFO, who'd been sitting silent at the far end of the table, trying to disappear into the conference chair. "Effective immediately," Kwan said. "The summit is paused until Axis Dynamics restores compliance with Section 4.2. I expect confirmation of leadership reinstatement within 24 hours. Then he stood. No raised voice, no dramatics. Just the kind of quiet execution that ends careers. Dana Brooks followed him, folder in hand, heels clicking like gavel strikes. The rest of the Sinedra leadership team gathered their laptops and left without a word. That's when the real silence hit, the aftermath kind. Travis exhaled a shaky breath. "Look," he said, trying to find his voice. "This wasn't—" But the CFO cut him off. "Save it," he said flatly. "Just save it." He turned to me, his face gray. "Natalie, I want to personally apologize. You should never have been removed. Legal will handle this, but please, just stay reachable." "Of course," I said simply, gathering my documents into the folder. My tone wasn't cold, just precise, the same way you'd close a file after it served its purpose. I left the room without looking back. The West Wing hallway was lined with floor-to-ceiling glass, and through it, I could see the ballroom beyond. The massive LED screens were still cycling through summit graphics, bright colors, motivational slogans, meaningless noise over a disaster that had just detonated. 10 minutes later, the official word came through internal Slack channels. Summit suspended pending client governance review. Not rescheduled. Not postponed. Suspended. In the corporate world, suspended is a loaded word. It doesn't mean delay. It means liability. It means lawyers are now in charge. From where I stood near the lobby, I watched as the Sinedra executives quietly filed out of the resort. Laptops shut, badges clipped, no smiles. They moved like surgeons leaving an OR after calling time of death. Then, last out the door, came Travis. Alone. No entourage, no clipboard. Just his phone clutched in both hands like it could somehow resurrect him. He wasn't strutting anymore. His tie hung loose, his mouth tight, eyes glazed in that dazed, "How did this happen?" confusion that only truly oblivious men wear after they self-destruct. Word spread fast. Within an hour, there was a war room forming back at Axis Dynamics HQ. Legal threads pinged nonstop. HR pretended to be neutral. The CFO's assistant was already scheduling an emergency alignment call for that evening. By the time I arrived back at my hotel, the entire company network was on fire. There were whispers about breach liability, potential refunds, and worst of all, termination of the $30 million MSA contract. When my phone finally rang, the caller ID made my stomach twist. "Jason Merritt, our CFO." I answered on the second ring. "Natalie." His voice sounded strained, like someone trying to swallow gravel. I just got off the call with Sinedra's counsel. They're calling this a material breach. Todd, sorry, Travis, made unilateral decisions without approval." "Correct," I said, calm. He hesitated. Legal is advising we document corrective actions immediately. I assume you'll want to file a formal complaint. Eventually, I said. But for now, I'd like clarity on reimbursement procedure. There was a pause. Reimbursement? Yes. I scrolled through my phone, pulled up the receipt for my personal flight and hotel. Since I was removed from the travel manifest, I paid my own way. I'd like to know if there's a protocol for when VPs sabotage logistics, or should I just submit through standard channels? For a second, there was dead silence on the line, then a quiet sigh. Submit it directly to me, he said. And, Natalie? Yes? He hesitated again, softer this time. Thank you for containing this before it got worse. I didn't say you're welcome. I just hung up. Because I knew it wasn't over. This was only the first ripple. 5 minutes later, a new email hit my inbox. From Dana Brooks, General Counsel, Sinidra Corp. Subject: Continued collaboration. Body: Hi Natalie, we've begun internal review of next phase scopes. Would you be open to discussing continued engagement as a direct contractor? We value your leadership and would prefer to work with you directly going forward. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the quiet satisfaction bloom behind my ribs. Travis hadn't just lost his flight manifest, he'd lost the entire contract. And I hadn't said a single unprofessional word. I just read the fine print and let the clause do the talking. By the time I closed my laptop that night, the war room back at Axis Dynamics was in full meltdown. Slack threads were popping like fireworks, finance trying to control exposure, legal begging for time, and PR pretending they weren't 3 seconds away from a nervous breakdown. Everyone was scrambling to align narratives. Translation: spin the story before the client went public. I sat on the edge of my stiff hotel bed, coffee cup balanced on my knee, scrolling through the internal messages as they poured in. Someone from HR dropped a passive-aggressive reminder about respectful communication during sensitive transitions. Another exec announced that Travis had been placed on administrative leave pending review. The euphemism of the decade. Then, my phone buzzed again. New message: CFO Jason Merritt. Natalie, the board wants a situation report tomorrow morning. You're the only one with complete documentation. Would you be willing to brief them? For a second, I just stared at the text. It was almost funny. 2 days ago, I wasn't even worth a boarding pass. Now I was the only person who could save their $30 million lifeline. Sure, I typed back. I'll prepare a summary and supporting exhibits. I didn't sleep that night, not from stress, but because clarity is addictive. When you've spent years being talked over, sidelined, and politely erased, there's something euphoric about watching your evidence stand taller than the men who dismissed you. At sunrise, I walked into the makeshift conference room Axis Dynamics had converted into a crisis center. Cables everywhere, half-empty water bottles, people speaking in acronyms to hide the fact they were panicking. Jason looked up from his laptop when I entered. The dark circles under his eyes were practically branded. "Morning, Natalie," he said, voice low. "Appreciate you coming in." I placed a slim folder in front of him. "Here's the breach documentation, clause citations, and client correspondence. Everything is time-stamped." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a full day. "Sinidra's legal called this morning. They're considering resuming the partnership, but under direct oversight from their CEO and legal. They specifically mentioned you." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning they want you leading all deliverables personally," he said. "No intermediaries, no filters. They're calling it a strategic partner engagement." I let that settle in. Strategic partner, not employee, not contractor, not placeholder. It was the kind of phrasing that comes with leverage, not approval. Jason rubbed his temples. "I'm going to be honest, Natalie. The VP is finished. There'll be an announcement soon. HR is finalizing the paperwork. I think the board's hoping your continued leadership will stabilize what's left." I nodded. "Then we rebuild it clean." The rest of the morning blurred into procedural chaos, damage control meetings, legal briefings, budget recalculations. But somewhere amid the noise, a strange calm started settling in. Everyone who had once ignored my input now treated every word like gospel. It wasn't respect, it was necessity, but it was enough. Around 11 a.m., my phone pinged again, this time from Dana Brooks, the client's general counsel. Mr. Kwan has approved the reinstatement of the roadmap session under your leadership. The summit will reconvene next week. Please confirm your availability and send revised travel arrangements. I typed one word back, confirmed. An hour later, an internal memo dropped company-wide. Subject line, leadership realignment. 2 sentences long. Effective immediately, Vice President of Strategy, Travis Denton, will be departing Axis Dynamics. We thank him for his contributions and wish him the best in future endeavors. I almost laughed. There it was, the polite obituary of a corporate ego. No farewell post, no spin-doctored quote, no dramatic exit, just erased. The same way he'd tried to erase me. By the end of the day, the internal systems were already updating. His Slack handle deactivated. His email bounced back. His name scrubbed from the org chart like it had never existed. As for me, I received one last message before logging off. From Dana Brooks. Natalie, thank you for protecting the integrity of this partnership. Mr. Kwan would like to personally acknowledge your professionalism at the upcoming session. No exclamation mark, no fluff, just quiet validation, the kind that actually means something. I leaned back, watching the cursor blink on my blank reply window. For once, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I just let it exist. I'd fought back not with noise or defiance, but with paperwork, with proof, precision, and a clause no one thought mattered until it detonated under their feet. When I finally shut the laptop and looked out the window at the fading San Diego skyline, I smiled. Not wide, not gloating, just steady. Because for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't the backup plan. I was the standard. And somewhere in the quiet corners of corporate America, a new unwritten rule had just been born. Never mess with someone who actually reads the MSA. A week later, the ocean outside the Seaside Convention Center looked like it was holding its breath. Calm, silver, too still for how much had changed beneath the surface. The new summit banner fluttered against the morning wind, smaller this time, more subdued. Gone were the oversized slogans, the corporate fireworks, the ego-inflated showmanship. In their place, a single clean header. Sinidra Strategic Planning, in partnership with Natalie Ford. That was it. No Axis Dynamics logo, no Travis, no marketing fluff. Just my name, plain and professional, but sharp as a blade. Inside the ballroom, things were different too. The air felt lighter, the tension gone. The same executives who once nodded past me now stood when I entered. Mr. Kwan, the CEO, greeted me with a firm handshake. "Ms. Ford," he said evenly, "thank you for protecting the integrity of this project. Let's begin fresh." There was no triumph in his tone, only respect, the kind that doesn't need to be performed. I took the podium, clicked the remote, and the screen lit up with the August roadmap. My roadmap. Every number verified, every slide precise. As I walked the room through the revisions, explaining scope realignments and integration pathways, no one interrupted, not once. Every head was up, every pen moving. Halfway through, I caught sight of Riley Chen from the analyst team sitting near the back. He gave me a small nod, almost shy, but proud. He'd been one of the first to speak up when the data didn't match. I gave him the faintest smile in return before continuing. By the end of the session, when the client CFO asked a question about compliance handoffs, I didn't need to reference a note. I knew the process cold. I'd lived it. The same presentation Travis tried to hijack was now airtight, bulletproof, and, finally, mine. When it wrapped, Mr. Kwan stood again. "Outstanding clarity," he said simply, turning to his team. "This is what alignment looks like." That sentence would echo for weeks. Later that afternoon, as everyone packed up their laptops, Dana Brooks walked over, her expression softening for the first time since I'd met her. "You know," she said quietly, "it's rare to see someone win a legal battle without raising their voice." "I didn't need to," I said. "The contract did the yelling." She smiled, just a flicker, and handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was the updated engagement contract. My name listed under Strategic Partner Lead, Independent Consultant. The terms were clean, the compensation generous, and the autonomy absolute. No oversight from Axis Dynamics, no middle management, just direct collaboration with Sinedra Corp. When I stepped outside that evening, the California light hit the glass buildings like champagne, warm and golden. I stopped near the hotel's outdoor cafe, ordered an espresso, and opened my laptop one last time to check the newsfeed. The top headline on the corporate wire read, "Axis Dynamics loses 30 million MSA renewal following internal breach." I didn't click it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it said. Somewhere in that article, there'd be a line about unforeseen leadership changes and realignment of governance structures. It would never mention names, but everyone who mattered already knew them. I closed the laptop, took a sip of coffee, and let the quiet satisfaction sink in. The irony wasn't lost on me. Travis had tried to erase me from a boarding list, and now he was the one erased. From systems, from emails, from memory. A digital ghost. Back at the hotel, my phone buzzed with a new message from the client side. From Riley Chen. Subject, follow-up materials. "Hey Natalie, just wanted to say it's been great working with you again. The new roadmap is the cleanest version we've ever had. Thanks for setting the record straight." I smiled. "Happy to help," I typed back. Precision matters. When I finally packed my things, I paused for a moment at the window. Below, the sea kept moving, slow, relentless, indifferent. The kind of steady power that doesn't make noise but shifts entire tides. That's what the claws had been. That's what I'd become. Not loud, not vengeful, just exact. A woman who read the contract line by line, and when they tried to delete her name, used those same lines to carve it back in stone. I zipped up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed toward the elevator. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was something colder, cleaner. Justice, written in 10-point legal font. And as the elevator doors slid shut, I whispered the last lesson out loud, just once, for myself. Never underestimate the quiet ones, especially the ones who wrote the clause.